Welcome to Maine Concerns, where our news team gives you a closer look at the events that happened around Maine this week.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Cindy Campbell. The other day, I was at a store in Brewer that was asking people to round up their purchase price and donate the excess to the Maine Veterans Project, which I happily did. I then saw Doc Goodwin mention that a national magazine, Woman's World, reached out and wants to do a feature story on the organization. And finally, I saw that June is National PTSD Month, and I realized that someone was trying to tell me I needed to interview Doc Goodwin and help spread the word about the Maine Veterans Project. Doc, so let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your military history.
So I grew up in Machias, Maine, and woke up one day and kind of realized I didn't really have a path there. So I just picked up the phone and called every recruiter in town. Thought I'd be going into the Army, and they gave me a month's waiting list. So I chose to go into the Navy because they could be there in a few days. And that was the total amount of decision-making that went into my decision to join the military.
What branch were you in?
United States Navy, and I was a hospital corpsman.
Okay, and how long were you in the Navy?
I would say just a bit over 7 years.
Okay. I would think during that time, maybe you were overseas somewhat?
Yes. So I basically tried to deploy any chance I got to both combat and non-combat. The military offers an array of both normal jobs in a uniform with just extra angst of having to do everything perfectly. And then they also have more military type jobs. And I kind of joined to do the more military type jobs.
Okay. Just inject here that people can learn more about you and your history through your book. What's the name of your book?
Oh, goodness. So this autobiography of sorts is called Me, Myself, and I. And
it's available on Amazon. It's very interesting. I'm actually in the process of reading it.
Interesting would probably be the best word to describe it. There's a lot of life in that little book.
There is, man. I'll tell you what. I went on Amazon, and you know how you can take a look inside, and I started reading, and you started talking about all of the illnesses that you had when you were just a child. And I thought, man, if this much has happened to him before he's like 5, I got to read this book.
It was a combination of being sick and a lack of technology at the time that kind of made that a little more tumultuous than it needed to be. I mean, I was seeing cancer doctors for a bad sinus infection.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And just knowing that I survived being on digitalis as a kid is actually the miraculous one. To this day, we'll never know what the heart condition was, but the fact that I was on one of the heaviest hitting cardiac drugs on the planet as a 10-year-old is weird.
That's insane. That's just insane. It's amazing that you survived that, let alone, 7 years in the military. So, wow. So back to the military, June is National PTSD Month. I would imagine you've had some experience, whether personally or seeing it through some of the eyes of other veterans.
Absolutely. PTSD is something that, so my generation of military folks was very much, nothing bothers you. And if it does, nothing bothers you.
Right.
When you come to work, to work, and we don't care about your little whines and cries and pains and aches. So, whenever you were sad, you just flip that little switch, usually fueled by whiskey, and just said, okay, I'm happy again, and stuffed it as deep as it could possibly go. I myself actually suffered horribly from PTSD, but not so much from PTSD itself, but from the lack of acknowledging it, the lack of owning it, and the lack of doing anything in a healthy manner to try and address it. If anything, I was just feeding the monster every single day, spoonful after spoonful of whatever it needed to grow. But when I finally did come to, terms with that, it was even harder to deal with because I had let it go for so long that all of a sudden reality was a giant Mike Tyson boxing glove to the face.
Yeah. Yeah, that really is something that's changed for the better in recent years, I think, because the whole idea that, people come back for more and they're heroes and it must have been glorious what they went through is not the reality of what they went through. And they in the past, like you said, have had to just kind of swallow it down and go along with everyone and say, yes, I'm doing great. I think it's so healthy now that we recognize that can really have an adverse effect on veterans.
Well, that's what I'm noticing through our work with the organization is, people are realizing it's okay to not be okay. And some of these younger veterans are coming in at an age that they need to be coming in. I'm going to be 42 next month, and it took me up until a few years ago to even start addressing things.
Yeah.
So I missed out on probably 12 years of active, healthy life by simply drowning with a cinder block over my head. And the worst part is, I was driving my own bus the whole time.
So tell us about the Maine Veterans Project. What inspired you to create this organization?
Well, that's a two-part answer. So What inspired me to start the Maine Veterans Project was the most amazing man that has ever graced this planet and a healthy dose of being super selfish. And again, I speak very candidly about this because it addresses PTSD head on. When I moved home to Maine, I didn't move home because I thought Maine lobster was delicious, like I told everybody for years. I moved home because I had absolutely hit rock bottom, and then I think I drilled down a few more feet and lived in that hole for a while when I was over on the West Coast. So when I came home, I was absolutely lost. I mean, just a couple of years prior, I was the person everybody turned to whenever they had any problems. I was moderately important on the base, and I had a sense of purpose. And when I came home to Maine, I was just an empty shell, kind of trudging along. And I virtually met this man named Justin Fitch. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He passed October 2016. But Justin Fitch was an Army captain that was battling stage 4 colon cancer. And he was battling veteran suicide with his last remaining days of life. And if I'm being completely honest, in a very embarrassing acknowledgement, it was the first time in my life I had ever heard that term. When I was living in San Francisco, I was completely sheltered by anything that would resemble the military, other veterans, and frankly, that's what I was looking for at the time. So imagine my shock when I kind of woke up and started looking at reality and realized that my own brothers and sisters were dying at a rate of 20 plus per day.
Yeah.
So the Maine Veterans Project was both because I knew something that needed to be done, but it also gave me that sense of purpose I was missing. It gave me a reason.
And so what's the mission? What do you hope to accomplish through the Maine Veterans Project?
The purpose of the Maine Veterans Project is hands down suicide prevention. And what we hope to accomplish through everything that we do is a two-part. We hope to preserve life by both saving it, in the time of need and trying to help people get what they need to save their own lives. But we're also kind of hoping to bring attention to, mental illness as a whole.
Right.
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America, not just amongst veterans. And amongst veterans, it's an astronomically high number. So, if every single day through our words and actions and activities, we can help people crawl out of that hole on their own, that's less people that need to lean on us directly, more people that we can help ancillarily, and just a healthier community around us.
Right. So I love the fact that one of the ways that you work to accomplish this is through giving veterans a sense of community, because something like PTSD can be very isolating, can it?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's an interesting point that you just brought up, because PTSD can be isolating, yes. However, it's us. It's the users that make it isolating. The problem is I believed that little story I was telling myself every day, that I was inadequate, nobody wanted me around, that I was weird, that I couldn't integrate back into society after seeing the things I saw. It's a catch-22. I intentionally ostracized myself from my friends, and then I would turn around and become the victim when my friends didn't want to be around me. And it almost perpetuated that little voice in my head saying, you shouldn't go do that thing. Don't go have fun. Don't go do anything because you're not worthy of it. So, we self-isolate, and then when the end byproduct of people don't want to be around us comes around, then we wonder why people walked away.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but we are worse than our PTSD because of what PTSD does to our brains.
I think that's true of even people maybe without PTSD, that you can really put yourself into a place where you convince yourself that other people, that you're different and other people don't want to be around you. And we need to be able to get out of ourselves a little bit and have a community that supports us instead of shutting ourselves off from other people.
Well, the answer is both simple and incredibly impossible at the same time. Because when I say it out loud, you're probably going to say, yep, that's the number one thing I struggle with. It's the number one thing civilians struggle with, veterans struggle with, but it all comes down to self-love. How are we ever going to expect anybody else to care and love about us if we don't do it ourselves?
Right.
And that is the problem. I equate PTSD to being like a scratch on your arm. It's bad, but you have time to address it before it gets real bad. And then a week later, it's a festering infection and you have to have your arm amputated.
Right.
A month later, it gets worse than that. A year later, worse than that. And then it becomes an unmanageable thing that started as a scratch.
Right. And the worse it gets, the more you don't want to tell anybody about it.
Well, let's put it this way. More than 22 people every single day lose their battle to this demon that we're discussing right now. And so, if I could tell anybody anything right now is no matter how badly you're hurting, if you're alive to feel that hurt, then you're already winning. And you're already doing better than, unfortunately, our counterparts that just couldn't get there.
Right.
So I hate to say it, but the pain is a stark reminder that we are on top of it.
So
Might not feel that way.
Tell me about some of the ways that you are addressing this through the Maine Veterans Project.
So some of the ways that we address it through the Maine Veterans Project, and the primary reason I wrote the book is I would try to be, the poster child of what we're dealing with. I try to be as candid as possible about my own struggles. And, the thing is, we need an organization of peers, not an organization of presidents,
Right.
And what we need to do is just the biggest thing that MVP could ever do to help this cause is reignite the camaraderie we're missing from service. In the service, in my personal opinion, life was harder. I made way less money. I had to listen to people I didn't respect. I had a very regimented life, which is sometimes good, But then I get out and I have nothing but freedom. I have the pride of service, and I'm worse off than I ever was because I don't have my support system anymore. And yes, sometimes we dealt with problems in a very toxic way by getting absolutely drunk together. But together is the key word there.
Right.
Everything we went through is together, and now everything I go through is just by myself. And it's not that I can't solve the problem, it's that I just don't have that camaraderie that I always had. And I think we're all missing that as veterans on the outside.
Absolutely. Yeah. So are you looking to expand your community? Are you looking for volunteers to work with the Maine Veterans Project?
Yes, absolutely. And we're looking for volunteers for two reasons. MVP is a volunteer organization, so our currency is the feeling we get when we do this.
Right.
So if we can say out loud that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America, and we can say out loud that it feels real good to help people, then if we can bring volunteers in, not only does that help MVP logistics, but it spreads out that currency to other people that might even need it worse than we do.
Yeah.
And so, it's actually ironic because if somebody reaches out and says, hey, my cousin just got back from Iraq and he's struggling really hard, or she's struggling really hard, and I just don't know how to help them, I don't call them up and say, hey, your cousin said you're all screwed up. Do you need some help? We call up and say, hey, the Maine Veterans Project could really use a hand. Why don't you come out on Wednesday and hang out with us for the day?
Right.
And, just an organic, natural environment, try to get to know the person, try to understand what it is exactly that they're going through, and try to make them part of the team.
So speaking of the kinds of community things that you do, I know you have an event coming up next week, right? Wings and Wheels, is that what it's called?
Yes, the fine folks at the DeWitt Airfield in Old Town and the Old Town airport manager, who's also a Marine, Lance Farrar, has partnered up with a bunch of community members there. And last year they hosted an absolutely amazing and huge car show and air show event. And this year we're anticipating it to be even bigger and better. So June 10th at the DeWitt Airfield in Old Town. And there's even going to be a blues concert that night right on the tarmac.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a little something for everybody. It's either a very long, awesome day for somebody, or come to the car show, come to the blues event. It's dealer's choice.
Yeah. And you schedule a lot of, not everything is on that scale. You schedule a lot of smaller things. I know, like, you hold a lot of paintball days, don't you?
We do. Paintball is awesome. Maine Military Supply has been a huge supporter for many years, actually since we first started. And they have a great field out there. It's a really fun activity. It's kind of military-centric. But yeah, Maine Veterans Project, on average, hosts around 54 events between March and October. The idea is just to put as much out there as possible, get as many people out of their homes as possible, because, what we have to try and do right now is we're trying to store the batteries for winter. During the summer, we have all kinds of options for being outside, for bringing people together. And not to mention, we usually wake up to sunny days and we go to bed, at a reasonable time because it stays light out longer. But in the winter time, it gets very dark and isolated. And what we're trying to do is bring people out in full force all summer long to just try and give them coping methods for the hard winters.
Right. Right. And I would think to make some new friends who, exchange phone numbers, you can reach out during those winter months and have someone that you can talk to that understands what you're going through.
Absolutely. And those connections happen, I would say, at every single event organically, especially our ice fishing event. We also understand that a lot of veterans have moved to Maine from other states. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, look, not everything is a Bar Harbor trip. Right in your own backyard, you have ice fishing, you have hiking, you have tipping, you have bird watching, hunting. Anything we would possibly want to do in Maine is usually located right in your own backyard.
Yeah. So if we have veterans who are listening who say, I think I'd like to get involved with this, or I'd like to go to one of these get-togethers that you schedule, where do they get that information?
So they can go to MaineVeteransProject.org. That's Maine like the state, veterans with an S, project.org. Or they can visit our Facebook page, the Maine Veterans Project Facebook page. And we are very active on the Facebook page, constantly updating our events and what we have going on.
Okay. Is there information there as well if someone's listening and wants to make a donation to your organization, how they can do that?
Yes, absolutely. We have a donation button on the Facebook page. We also have a donation link on the website. It's very secure, and right now we need funds more than we ever have.
Okay. All right. Awesome. You have somebody who's flipping a tire to raise money for you, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, on June 24th, Mike Laliberty on Maple Street, just one street over from us, is going to flip a 400-pound tire a full mile. And I should also add that Mike is an amputee. He has a below-the-knee amputation.
Okay.
And this tire at 400 pounds will be flipped almost 800 times by the time he's done.
I'm tired just hearing that.
Oh, yeah. And, it's just incredible that he does it. It's incredible. Because Mike is just a very outgoing guy anyway. He's been doing this for years. He just decided to go ahead and wrap it around a cause.
Yeah. And what a great cause to wrap it around.
I would have to agree with that one.
Thanks so much to Doc for spending some time with us. Find more information about this amazing organization at MaineVeteransProject.org and on the Maine Veterans Project Facebook page. I'm Cindy Campbell. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay healthy.
Join us again next weekend for Maine Concerns with your Town Square Media News team.